Welcome all to another Open Team in-depth session in our shift in the series towards human-centered design. And I'm really excited to have Angela Knuth here to talk about how about their operation and how they're using their integrating their technology into their management. I think a number of the folks on this call have had the pleasure of working with Angela over the last year or so. And so I'm really excited to dive in. We're going to ask Angela to present a bit, and if you have a question, please unmute yourself or put your question in the chat. Use the hand raise feature, and we can we'll get into, I think, a good conversation here. And with that, I'm gonna let Angela introduce herself, her operation, and we're on our way.
Thank you, Dawn. I farm with my husband and our two sons. My husband's name is Carrie. Our two sons is Gregory and Garrison. They're 22 and 20. They both are interested in carrying on the farming operation. So that's one motivation as we move forward. We are in Mead, Nebraska. Historically, the farm has been in a corn, soybean rotation. Carrie and I started lengthening the rotation in 2012. We put in wheat into that rotation. And then as we've moved through the years here, we are transitioning some acres to organic. We will be, in 2020, we will have our first field, hopefully, certified. And that, again, is a motivation for good documentation. And we are also looking into and working with NORI and looking at carbon markets, which again would require good documentation.
Angela, just so you know, I'm on the call. This is Ryan.
Oh,
So I'll back you up if need be.
Thank you. Thank you. So,
yeah. And I think I saw Alden on too. Is that right? Or maybe not.
Yeah, Jacob, our designer, is on as well. But yeah, go ahead.
So historically, how Carrie and I got kind of on the documentation trail was back in 2008, we needed a better way of documenting the inputs that were going in and out of the farm, basically for billing purposes. So real quickly, we got a hold of a group that was doing managerial accounting, and basically what was happening with that is we would create cost centers, and that would be equipment and other assets like land, and then we would start allocating cost towards those pieces of equipment and land so that we could break down what was costing us within maybe if you were doing benchmarking, what was costing us more than what was normal. So it just helped us keep track of our expenses as well as income. And then from there, the problem was, how do we get the information out of the cab? All our cabs have monitors on them, which are tracking machinery information as well as agronomic information as far as inputs and the person. We can track the person that's in the cab too. So all that was coming together, and we needed better ways of bringing that information together. We were using paper work orders, which is a double entry as far as creating the work order. The applicator fills out the work order, and then we'd have to bring it back to the office and enter it. So our first go around was using a company called Conservice, who was very good. And they were a logging system. They had an app also that was on our phone, so it effectively helped us get the information out of the cab of a tractor and into, as they call it, the back office, without having to do the double entry system. So that worked well. We used them for about 3 years, I think it was. So in combination with the information coming off the monitor, along with these logs that was tracking the person, start-stop times, and also, what do I want to say? It was taking our planned input amounts, and actually, we would, after we get done with like a spray, for example, the applicator would go into the log and say, okay, this was planned application rate, and then this was actual. So we were getting real time, so to speak, verification of what was applied to each field, which comes in very handy when you're doing inventories and splitting out inputs and where they went, and costing it out correctly. From there, we were introduced to a company called Farm Mobile. And what they did was they took a puck, I think it stands for passive uplink connection, and they connected to the ISO bus on the tractors and combines. So it was giving us the telematics real time. So along with uploading it to their portal, and then giving us historical records as well. So we kind of jumped on board with them. So we're tracking pretty much every piece of equipment, except for a few older ones, in real time on the PC, as well as capturing that historical data. And it's given us everything from fuel to load on the engine, pretty much helping us understand, you know, are we over, do we have too much horsepower, can we cut back? And then we're finding out that is the case in some instances. And then again, it's a historical record of dates and times and what was actually used as far as equipment. So we combined that in 2016, 17 with another company called Cropzilla, and they actually share that telematics data from Farm Mobile. So what that effectively did was eliminate us having to take Farm Mobile's data, manually enter it into Cropzilla. It goes across seamlessly. And Cropzilla is our basically we pre-plan a season with people, input, equipment, and we've set up in Cropzilla the costs associated, again, those costs and the costs associated with everything as far as people, inputs and equipment. So then it gives us, at this point in time, we are able to calculate every field action, what it's costing us for each field. And then from that, we can come up with a contribution margin for each field as far as which ones are the most productive as far as making us most money. So in a nutshell, that's kind of where we're at. Sorry if that was boring.
Not at all. This is exactly the context that we're looking for.
Okay, if you want, so can people see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. Yep, your desktop.
Okay. Okay, so unfortunately I didn't record any real-time screenshots, but this is kind of the information on a spray that's collected. So this is a field, as you can see here, and at the end of the year, collectively, this is what happened in this field. We planted, it has our dates, corn, variety, and again, the number of acres. And we certify these acres. We go through and verify that the information on this actual application is correct. And that's kind of where Farm Mobile comes in, Farm OS comes in. We use Farm OS as redundancy between Farm Mobile and Cropzilla. And what I mean by that is, as I said, Farm Mobile is sharing data with Cropzilla, but sometimes the pucks have problems and they don't work. So that data is not collected. So consequently, Cropzilla does not have that information. That's where we would use FarmOS to actually provide the data. Or in this case, on these certifications, I will go back to FarmOS and check what was logged. Oops, sorry about that. Check what was logged in FarmOS to what actually was coming out of the machine. As you can see here, we have harvest. This is a different field, but so we have harvest, we have certain observations, and here's where I'll put in like, this is a wheat field actually. So we top dressed, irrigated, aerial applications, as you can see, and then baling. So that verifies what's happening here, and then that goes into Cropzilla here. We have field plans made up. As you can see, these are all crops, or we have corn, field plan, look that up. And here's every pass that's happening in the field. Pre-spray, planting, put in a moisture probe, post-spray. So that all gets planned out earlier. And then, like I said, if I can find where I put it, this is Cropzilla. This is their, if I take you back here. Sorry, I'm not the best at presenting here, but everything kind of gets dumped into this software package. And here's our operation activities. And what this is doing here is what we projected in those field plans I showed you. It is comparing to actually what happened. And then this variance is us, how many dollars off we were on predicting what it was going to cost us based on everything from setup time to hours at zero. What else could I show you here? If I go to,
I was wondering if I may ask a question right now.
please do.
Okay, cool. I was just trying to connect all the pieces in my mind. And so it seems like it's your, just correct me if I'm getting the data flow wrong. Machinery data collected automatically is then sent over ISO bus to Farm Mobile. Then from there, it's automatically sent to Cropzilla, and then you're doing a manual sort of replication of everything in FarmOS. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
And,
it's
sorry, go ahead.
It's just redundancy for us because, like I said, sometimes the pucks don't capture the data for whatever reason. And then the other part of where FarmOS comes in for us is there are some older tractors that do not have a puck on them, but they're still performing operations. So we need to capture that data, especially with us coming into organics. We have to have some way of certifying dates and times that we actually did apply product or we're in the field. And even with organics, like when we actually clean our equipment out, we have to document that, and FarmOS is going to be perfect for that.
Okay. And so when you're sort of trying to interact with your data or check on what's happened, would you start by looking at Farm Mobile, or do you primarily sort of look at the analytics in Cropzilla, or are each of these tools sort of giving you different types of information or that you're looking for? Sorry, I don't know if the question made sense out loud.
So, yeah, no, when the season starts, we start with that field plan in Cropzilla, and that's basically just a pre-plan of what we think is going to happen in that season, and then I also create that plan in FarmOS. So there's some double entry there that I think Jamie had mentioned that he would be interested in talking with Cropzilla about maybe passing from FarmOS to Cropzilla or back and forth so that double entry wasn't happening. So from there, then the field action actually happens, and that's where Farm Mobile is collecting actual data.
Mm-hmm.
And so that actual data, yes, goes back into Crowdzilla, where we apply actuals to actual and get our actual costs of,
Okay.
of production, which has been very helpful for us. We found out with just, and it sounds basic, but there's just a lot of pieces, and once you get done with a field action, onto something else. But it's allowed us to take a look at our equipment, and we know for sure now that it's like, we love nice new shiny tractors, but they just cost too much on a lot of our field applications. So we've kind of backed off on purchasing bigger and better, and kind of went back to older style tractors. As long as we can get a puck on them, it just cheapens things up.
Totally.
And inputs. We've really been able to focus on those too. So I guess that's kind of the overall. I could take any questions, maybe be a little more specific on anything if someone wants that.
Yeah, Angela, I understood from some previous conversations you're also using some of these tools in terms of communicating between the field crew and the elevator and so forth. I wonder if you might say a little bit about sort of that chain of sort of what's being communicated and how you're using it in that way as well.
Farm OS or just technology?
Or just in general, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, we basically are starting off. We have our meetings and get everybody on board on what's the agenda for their week. And what we're working on now is, so last year I had to record everything in Farm OS myself, and that's really difficult. So what we're doing this year is we're working with Jamie to get that app ready to roll, the toolkit app, and then working with everyone on basically our group, is just the family, but everybody records their own data. So if one of the boys is out bailing and there's no puck on that baler, they have to record their information. It's critical that communication is there, that they know they have to do it, and that they get it done. Dorn, I guess I'm not exactly sure as far as what you meant as far as sharing with suppliers.
Yeah, my understanding again is just sort of linking that field level data back to across internally, but also how you present this the crop data externally. I think you're speaking to it a little bit in terms of certification, but my understanding there's some communication that you're also doing as as with the grain trucks and so forth, and maybe you can refresh my memory on that.
So in two instances, yeah. So the Farm Mobile comes in very handy for real-time tracking of equipment and harvest. It's highly critical that we know where the semis are, as far as if we're hauling to an elevator. As far as, for example, so we have some fields that are just back and forth and they're very efficient. We have other fields where they're cut up and there's parts of the field that is efficient and part that it take a little time to get a load for a truck. So what Kerry does is he's watching where the semis are in line in the elevator, and he knows how fast they're going to get back. So what he can do then is, because we don't want the combine to stop, and we don't want the truck sitting. So he knows if he's got like an hour, he'll go and do the inefficient parts of the field that take longer. And then he's watching those trucks. So he times it so that by the time a truck is back to the field, we have a full grain cart. So we run up there, dump on the truck, the combine's still running, and we can get back to that combine without it stopping in the field. And again, the truck is full and on its way. That's very helpful, very efficient for us. And then the other thing with sharing the data is Farm Mobile has that, they are working with companies that will buy our data. So that's where this certify comes in. We certify the data, and Farm Mobile goes out and finds, I think a few years ago, it was insurance companies needing to verify their information. I think this year it had to deal with satellite imagery. They're using our data to verify what they're seeing on their data. So that sharing across different, I guess it wouldn't be platforms, but that sharing across different areas of interest is really kind of cool. So we're actually getting paid for our data now, and that's where the carbon market is very interesting as well, because they're using our data to verify that these practices are what's going on, and you guys can help me on that. Our data is verifying this is actually what happened, and then they're measuring the carbon sequestration based on the type of practices. I don't know if I said that right, Ryan, or not, but.
No, you're good, Angela. And then Alden was able to join as well, so she's on as well. And one thing that I'll just say very quickly is that the way that Nori approached Angela through our current pilot for croplands in the U.S. was actually through Pipeline Foods. So it was an interesting connection of how different sort of ag supply and value chains can come together to kind of maximize and stack values, right? Like across different products and technology platforms. So Angela ended up really being, kind of way out front, like able to run with all of this, had the I wouldn't say integrated, but interoperable, right, Dorn? Where, you have different platforms talking to each other and avoiding duplicate entry. So it made for a really good case study for Nori as we sort of approached our second, project that we're going to be verifying shortly. So Angela is actually like our number 2 farmer. The first one was paid on the first issuance late last year.
Can I just add, I am here, but it's Alden. I'm going to leave soon because I have to catch a plane. But I just have to say that if anybody wants to have a great time, get Angela to invite you to her farm.
It's open door. I was going to say, up on the screen, this is kind of what Carrie would see during harvest. Over to the left, that 2000 Volvo, that's our semi. This Clause 750 TT is the combine, and you can see we're getting yield. That's what he's seeing there, but there's other things you can set it to see. And then the Xerion is the grain cart that's right next to it. So that's basically, we were unloading there, and we can see cart weight and speeds. So that's real-time data. Unfortunately, I don't have any spray real-time data, but.
Just a quick question on that, Angela. So does this mean that he's manually optimizing the cycle time based on where the semi is also going to the, like how far it is to the elevator, including so it's that and what's happening in the field? Yeah,
and that will also, so if the field is closer to an elevator, then we definitely need all trucks on board. So we have 3 trucks. So if it's close, then we'll have all 3 running. If not, then we haul for local elevators, so we'll have one guy hauling for somebody else. So.
And where do you get the time estimate of how long it's going to take? Is that something that Carrie just knows, or does Farm Mobile sort of give you an estimate of total travel time?
It's something Carrie knows, but yeah, it does give you total. Yeah, he's very good at that. I will say, but it does give you historically. You can go back in Farm Mobile and look at what it took you, and then so for the next year, you would have that information available to you. But he basically he's been farming these fields since he was young, so he knows. But again, as you update your equipment, like our combines have gotten more, bigger, more capacity, the throughput is a lot faster. So, and then it changes with yields as well.
Awesome, thank you.
So,
So
Angela, I was going to ask if you might talk a little bit about sort of both this. You mentioned a little bit about the organic transition and some of the additional record keeping, and we've heard from Nori in terms of the kinds of information that they're looking at. I wonder if you might just speak a little bit about in terms of how the current set of tools you're using is well suited for that, and then also what some of the gaps are that you're looking at addressing to create more value from soils data and other kinds of things like that.
So setting with Cropzilla, setting up the field actions is very handy to have, because it gives us a pre-plan, kind of know where our costs are. There are major gaps in sharing information that isn't inside the cab or coming from a tractor, like the irrigation events or our moisture probes. Our moisture probes, that company does very well with their website and getting the probe data uploaded to that. The hard part is, how do we bring that data into Cropzilla to cost it out, or even to put events like when we say we fertigated, which is applying fertilizer with an irrigation event, or we vary variable rate irrigation, and it would be nice to have that information in Cropzilla as well, as far as how many gallons or was actually applied, and what was the rates for us to keep as historical. That information is not connected. So I have multiple screens because of instances like that. And also with our irrigation, our pivots actually have, we collect that data as well as when they're on and what they are applying, but it's not connected as well. And their reporting is really not very good. So that, like, if Nori wanted to know total amount of water applied to a field, it's not the cleanest information, and we have to go dig for it. Whereas we would prefer to have better reports and better connections, so that we could keep that in real time and keep it orderly, I guess. So those are some rubbing points. Trying to think what else would I'm kind of at a loss here, Dorn. As far as there's just a lot of areas. I think down the road, I always think of Google when I think of farm data, because Google has where you go and you click on the little square there, and you get to see, you want Google Docs, you want photos, you want all these different modules, but they're right there on one page. And it'd be nice if the ag equipment or ag software companies as well, all of them went together, so that farmers could pick and choose based on their needs. Because maybe I'm not explaining myself so well, but it's like just one place where there's multiple companies providing their software package, because one company can't provide all our needs. We've been at this long enough to know that they do maybe one thing well, but they lack in another area. So it's like we need a suite, but we need those different software pieces to talk to each other as well. So if that makes sense.
I have a question.
We're working on it. We're working on it. I guess, go ahead, Ankita. Sorry, I interrupted.
Sorry. Hi again. So how did you figure out the compatibility between the tools that you have right now? Because it at least seems like both Farm Mobile and Cropzilla talk really well to each other and are doing some of what you're saying in that one step. How was that something that you just figured out by tinkering, or yeah?
It was I guess supposed to happen. I don't know, but so Farm Mobile and Cropzilla kind of came to us at the same time, and they're both small, startups and open-minded, and really want to help the farmer. Whereas we were collecting data with John Deere, my John Deere, scoring up to their cloud, and you can just tell that they're not really doing it for the farmer. They're doing it for their bottom line.
Yeah.
So these guys, we just kept talking to them and telling them, this is what, we like this company. They're doing this. It would be great if we could share that data. And they both agreed, and it just kind of went from there. And that's why with Farm OS, I think there's a real possibility and real need for Farm OS to talk to Cropzilla and share setup information, and even Farm Mobile. It's like, we probably can't, I don't know if they can bring that information in, but just across platforms is so necessary, especially farming. I mean, we don't have a big labor force, so we're, as you've heard before, Bill was saying, wearing many hats. So anything to ease that up. But, and also the fact that we're starting to get paid for data. It's so critical to have good data and to be able to clean it up easy. And that would be verifications.
So I guess on a related note, you had mentioned that the first two types of data payments that you engaged in were for insurance companies and then satellite imagery. Were those conversations that you basically had with, was it Cropzilla that was doing the data sharing? No, it was Farm Mobile.
That's Farm Mobile reaching out and having those conversations. So they're aggregating the data. We can opt in or opt out, which is nice. They totally let us. We are in control of our data, which is awesome. So they're out looking for companies that need this data, and so they're the boots on the ground for us, and we just say, we want to opt in, and they can use our data then. So
cool. So is it opt-in for each of the different types of use cases, or is it like a general opt-in to all data sharing?
So far it's been use cases.
Awesome.
So,
thank you.
And like with the satellite imagery, it's like pretty soon they're going to, they already know what we're doing out there in the first place. They're going to know sooner or later. So I guess while they're verifying or what do I want to say, tightening up their specs or whatever on their imagery, it's like we might as well get paid while we can, because after that they're going to know what we are going to do 5 years from now, because it's farming is so predictable. One year you plant corn, and the next year you plant soybeans, so it's not that hard to predict out, and everybody seems to want to know what we're doing. So
yeah, cool. Thank you.
Great. We had Paul. You had your hand up.
Yeah, I had a question, Angela. It looks like on your desktop, I don't mean to be snoopy, but you might have Ag Leader SMS, and I was curious if that's something you use, and if so, how it's involved with everything.
Sure. Bring this up. So the Ag Leader SMS is our GIS platform, and this is on my desktop. I didn't do the cloud part of it. So this is the management tree of Knuth Farms, and these would be all the fields And like right now for 2020, this is our organic field. And so we had to make new boundaries because we have to have buffers. So what I was doing here is, here's our outside boundary. This is a 60-foot boundary, 60 foot right here, 60 foot. So we create cropping plans in here as well. And then I will upload this information to the monitor in a tractor. So for example, our planting, we do variable rate on planting. So I'll make a variable rate map, and then we'll put that in the monitor in the tractor, and then the tractor will automatically change rates as it gets, goes through the field, and has the different zones for those. So, and then these lines are basically our AB lines. So the tractor will follow these, and then we only turn on the ends. We don't drive the tractor through the field. So that's what that's. I'm sorry. Go ahead. This is
Who was talking there, but so it seems like this is just how you're planning out kind of the auto steering in the field, and so it's a lot of manual creating these maps and then uploading them to your different tractors. Yeah,
but it's also the data in the tractor that was recorded during a season. So like if we go to here, there's a grain harvest. I actually, just this past year, I normally used another software program, but John Deere bought them out and upped the price and didn't upgrade anything, so I got mad at him. So I'm trying to rebuild his historical data, but this is a wheat and corn harvest. This was wheat and this was corn. So we bring in the data from the monitor in the cabs. And we would have should have planting. So this would be those are harvests, but it's basically handling data for in and out of the cab or the monitor in the cab. So
does this data also go to Cropzilla for you to be able to do the accounting stuff that you were showing us earlier, the costing?
Yes. I can move that up. So here's a report from FarmMobile, and this one's just a workflow, or actually, excuse me, this is a planting activity, and this is telling us seed variety, average pop that actually. So we would have had planned population would have been 34,000, but this is a field that has dry land and irrigated acres, so the average came out to 32, and then you can see it has the breakdown of working hours, turning, transportation. I'm sorry, I don't have, let me see if I can.
That was super helpful, thank you.
Yeah. I wonder if you might just sort of go through again the portions as you're moving data between FarmOS, Cropzilla, and FarmMobile. How much of that is done automatically through APIs, and how much is a manual import-export process currently, and whether that's changing this year or whether that's something that's just maybe a little bit about the current process that.
Mostly with FarmMobile, it's mostly just verification. There's no, we just set up, the only setup on FarmMobile would be the equipment that the puck is connected to.
Yeah.
So that would be the only setup there. These are all pieces of equipment that have a puck on them. And then that data automatically, with them working together, that data that's collected with the puck goes right into Cropzilla. And as I mentioned, the Crubzilla, yeah, we have the field plans that we manually set up, but that data from the machine goes right into Crubzilla's
Yeah.
CV.
And when you're exporting that currently into FarmOS, are you're yeah, I guess what records are you pulling from that to enter then into FarmOS, such as like polygons or equipment tracks, or what's the extent and how manual is that currently?
I'm sorry, say that from Mobile to FarmOS?
Yeah, so what pieces of information are you currently extracting? And I understand that's not an automatic process, but what's the export import process currently?
Well, that is where the toolkit, the app, is going to come in extremely handy, because right now, so I'm pre-planning all these actions, and not
each of
only
those
do I
you're
have to,
currently manually entering each of those. Is that
yes,
correct?
and it's not fun at all.
No, exactly. That's what I'm getting at here.
Yeah. So, for example, to set up just an action like this, you have to go in and pick all these different pieces of equipment that's going to be in activity. I have to manually do that. I have to make sure that all the people are in there. So you go through these edits. So what day you approximately are going to do it. So the equipment, I've actually went in and made groups of different equipment. If you want me to show you, I can do that. So I have different groupings according to activities. So the best one would be harvest corn. I think that's good. So there's a lot of people and equipment that goes into a harvest action. So to help me set up these logs faster, I made a group that contains all the equipment. And if we don't have all the trucks running, I just don't select all of them. That's manual.
Mm-hmm.
But what that's allowed me to do with these groupings, and I went and did the same with, so when we spray fungicide, insecticide, for the most part, it's always the same equipment. So I can go in and set a group for that. I didn't do a very good job on that one, but so that would have, well, this is a good example of what would happen if I didn't have a group. So then you have to go in and go through all your equipment lists and find the pieces of equipment that belong in this field action. So that gets really tedious. So if we could, do a better job. And I'm talking with FarmOS, and they're very, very good at listening, and we're slowly getting to understand each other as far as the needs of row crop farmers, I guess you would say. Let's see. So yeah, all this is done manually. And with the toolkit, I'm hoping that we can have, I will have this made up manually, but then I won't have to come in myself and update it for actual. That's where the toolkit will come in handy, and the applicator will be in charge of, entering that data in the toolkit, and then it will come back to FarmOS and update the log. And we're talking about making sure that we don't lose the planned data versus the actual data, because that helps us understand what we're not, what we're, if we're assuming things wrong, or if something happened that day, what happened, why did it cause us to, take 2 hours longer than it should have. So I don't know if that answers your question there, Dorn.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of the, especially on the equipment, what about in terms of, your field entry or and polygons? Were you able to directly import those, or were you able to keep those consistent across the platforms?
Sorry, sorry.
The field boundaries, etc. Yeah, things.
Yeah. Okay, the field boundaries. Yeah, those were easy enough. Basically, I was able to import those from actually like a program like SMS here. You just do an export. Like I have my boundaries in here, so I just export it out. And that's how that would work.
I've got another question. I'm sure other folks do too, but we've talked a lot about equipment data and harvest logs. I wonder if, and Pat, I wonder if you might say a little bit about what kind of other data you're collecting on the farm. You mentioned that for organic certification, you do clean out logs and so forth. What other log types, like whether you're collecting nutrient, soils data, nutrient management information over time, and how you're handling those other types of sort of whole farm management data?
Well, for one thing, we scout our own fields, and so that is a problem I've had. So I will go out and scout a field, and I need to relay what I see in the field to Carrie, my husband, as far as what's happening weed-wise, growth stage of the crop, because applications are based on like weed height and growth stage. So we've had a hard time with that information, sharing that information. I've tried different apps on my phone because I need to take pictures, but I don't have any way of getting that information to Carrie. So that's been a struggle, but scouting is really important. I guess I was hoping in PharmOS, like these observations, I was messing around a little bit with trying to share data through the observations so that I could show images. And I'm trying to find one, sorry, that would have an example. And I don't have it. So observations in the fields is really difficult. Most of that software that is out in the industry does not share the data collected with any other parties, and it doesn't readily make it available to export as well. So.
And have you been able to test the field kit, the PharmOS field kit yet, the mobile app for observations?
So we worked on it last winter, and I had it on my phone starting last spring. But so again, this is a family farm, and I'm the mom. So I had to have this app perfect, otherwise they were going to look at me, and it was going to be, first impression is everything. So it wasn't
ready.
Yeah. So I did not show it to him, but I think this season it will be ready. And so hopefully Mom will be cool. I doubt it. But so here's like an observation. It may sound or look simple, but something like this where I can take a picture and they don't make a little, a lot of apps will make a small icon, and then you lose the visual, the granularity of what I'm seeing. Carrie needs to see how big these weeds are, and we need to document that. And growth stage, we can count the growth stage of the corn. Visually, this information is so much easier to convey visually, but we struggle with that. So, and this is something, I mean, we're out there in a field, one or more daily, especially now with organics coming on. This would be crucial. sharing that data. No, that was the same one. But anyway, so I actually use a travel app that lets you, when I'm scouting a field, it lets me do the breadcrumb of where I went in that field. It lets me take multiple pictures, and it lets me write notes on the picture. You know, like a little caption type of thing. So I can put all my notes on the picture. A lot of apps don't let you do that. And then plus, like I said, I can see where I was at in the field when I took that. So I can go right back to that location. But I have to use a travel app because I don't want to pay for an app that doesn't work with any of my other software. So
I have a quick question. I love that you're using a travel app to get the photos. This is super cool. I was also just wondering, when you were showing us the tracks in Ag Leader, you have all these different moments where you're trying to create field areas and create polygons and track space. Are you always wanting to be able to go into the field and physically just say, here now, collect data, or as I walk down this path or drive down this path, track this, track my coordinates? Or is this something that you often prefer to do when you're sitting in the office and then looking at your field and sort of doing the planning? And now that I say it, or are there both instances where you both want to go into the field and say here and now, and also relate that to something that you're planning in the office? Sorry, I don't know if the question is clear.
Yeah. So if we are going to put, like, for example, planting, if we're going to do multiple hybrids, I will sit down with the GIS software and map that out on the software first, and then that will go and be uploaded to the monitor in the cab. So that information, is started in the field. But when I go scout, I want to track where I was at that point in time, and collect the data. How with scouting, collecting data is sometimes the breadcrumb is always good to have, but sometimes you're not. I don't need to be collecting data as I'm moving, as far as anything, as far as temperature or something to that effect. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah,
a lot of times,
cool. Thank you. Yeah.
A lot of times it'd be so we plan, we apply, and then we will go out and verify, I guess you would say.
Okay.
Well, Angela, we're at the top of the hour. It's amazing how quickly that's gone. I feel like there's so much more, but I really want to thank you for your time to getting us started. I think it's given us a really great insight, and I think I speak for the group that we're really excited to learn from your experience and to work to help support the next phase of work together. So. Thank you so much, and really look forward to following up on some of the challenges you've identified, and look forward to being in touch.
Okay, I hope it was helpful.
Super helpful.
Well, nice to talk to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Angela.
Thanks, Angela.
Thanks, Angela.
Thank you. Bye-bye.